From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Harvest is underway in the Deep South.
I went down to central Louisiana yesterday and I got a report of 240, and that's pretty much the highest that I've heard.
See what Louisiana producers are finding out in the fields. Hopeful signs.
The time has come for policy to adjust.
A look at the timing of potential rate cuts from the Federal Reserve. And after gathering more than 3,000 samples, weighing, measuring, counting, ProFarmer crunches the numbers, releasing its national corn and soybean expectations. The final numbers right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Griffiths. After getting boots in the field to check out the Midwest corn and soybean crops, ProFarmer is releasing its official estimates. The numbers released after last week's ProFarmer crop tour, but this new batch of numbers factoring in all the other things as well, such as weather, crop maturity, historical differences from other tours, USDA forecast, and areas outside of the tour. With that in mind, ProFarmer is calling for a national average corn yield of 181.1 bushels to the acre. That's 2 bushels less than USDA's August prediction. For soybeans, it's forecasting an average yield of 54.9 bushels to the acre. That's 1.7 bushels higher than USDA. Checking the state-by-state breakdown for corn, the winner this year is Illinois, coming in at a whopping 220 bushels to the acre. ProFarmer predicting the state will smash the record of 214 bushels set back in 2022, saying that while there was variability, the high-yielding fields far exceeded those that disappointed. That's followed by Iowa, 212 bushels to the acre, with the southern two-thirds of that state showing strong yield potential. Indiana coming in third with 210 bushels to the acre. Now, ProFarmer saying it showed the most consistency. Fourth was Ohio at 197, saying the crop has more variability there. Coming in fifth, Nebraska at 189 bushels to the acre, with some of the dryland corn as good as irrigated acres this year. And sixth was Minnesota at 170 bushels per acre. Scouts on the tour finding drown out spots and yellow corn from heavy spring rains. Coming in last at 156 bushels to the acre is South Dakota, saying there are two very different crops between the early planted and the late planted acres. And Illinois takes the top spot again for soybeans as well, averaging 68 bushels to the acre, with pod counts jumping more than 11% over last year. Iowa and Indiana not far behind at 67 bushels to the acre for both on strong pod counts as well. Ohio putting in an impressive 66 bushels, followed by Nebraska at 57. That's followed by South Dakota at 50 bushels to the acre, and then Minnesota coming in last at 49. Now, ProFarmer saying the soybean crop across the 7 crop tour states is lush, dark green, and as clean as they've ever seen. And we have much more on the numbers and everything you may have missed from the 2024 ProFarmer crop tour over at agweb.com.
The time has come for policy to adjust. The direction of travel is clear, and the timing and pace of rate cuts will depend on incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks.
America's top central banker at the end of last week signaling that lower interest rates are finally on the horizon. Laura Geary has more on the announcement about what Powell said and didn't say.
It's the Fed's clearest signal yet that rate relief is on the way.
The timing and pace of rate cuts will depend on incoming data.
That magic word, cuts, which most economists expect will begin next month. But just how deep is still unknown.
With an appropriate dialing back of policy restraint, there is good reason to think that the economy will get back to 2% inflation.
That dialing back has been a long time coming. The Fed started aggressively hiking rates in early 2022, reaching a 23-year high to combat the highest inflation in decades as the world tried to recover from a global pandemic. The economy has been growing, but consumers are still feeling squeezed by the high costs of credit, mortgages, groceries, and other loans.
With prices having risen 2.5% over the past 12 months, progress toward our 2% objective has resumed.
The Fed's favorite inflation gauge, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, showed an annual rate of 2.5% in June, down from just over 7% 2 years ago.
The labor market has cooled considerably from its formerly overheated state.
A cooling amplified this week after the Labor Department shaved 818,000 jobs off a 12-month total ending in March. That, plus the current unemployment rate, highest since the fall of 2021, has many Fed watchers anticipating an even bigger rate cut than what may have been planned. The Fed's next policy meeting is in mid-September. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for AgDay.
Also on Friday, a Canadian workers' union issued a 72-hour strike notice to one of Canada's two major freight railroads. It came only hours after the company's trains had started rolling again following a potentially devastating stoppage. The Teamsters Canada Rail Conference filing its strike notice against Canadian National. It came shortly after it announced that it plans to challenge a government order that forced it into arbitration with both CN and Canadian Pacific Kansas City railroads to end a lockout. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other business groups backing the Canadian government intervention. About 30% of freight the two railroads carry crosses the U.S.-Canadian border, and experts say truck capacity can't make up for that kind of supply chain hit.
A 1 week one would be over $1 billion in terms of U.S. costs. A lot of the United States runs on Canadian oil, tar sands, other things, and a lot of what we consider American cars are actually assembled in Canada.
Not to mention the fact that a substantial amount of fertilizer originates in Canada and is delivered to the U.S. via rail. Now, last week's lockout lasted just over 17 hours. We could see some news coming out of China this week. It's reported the Biden administration will send a key advisor to the country. News agencies reporting National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will travel to Beijing. Sullivan will spend 3 days in the country meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. The U.S. official expected to raise concerns about China's support of Russia's military and tensions with Taiwan. Chinese officials are expected to want to discuss American tariffs. This would be Sullivan's 9th meeting with Chinese officials. While the summit isn't expected to lead to any major announcements, sources tell the Associated Press the goal is to maintain communications on a host of difficult issues with the country. The Southern Plains was once again baking in heat over the weekend, while much cooler conditions prevail over much of the eastern U.S. Meteorologist Jack Van Meter has a look ahead to this week.
Taking a look at the end of August and actually that first week of September, we can see that we're going to be experiencing some big changes across the United States. Thankfully, that ridge of high pressure that we're experiencing right now, bringing those incredibly high temperatures, is finally going to break down. Actually, we're going to start to see some cooler temperatures, specifically out west. Take a look. As we can see, Minneapolis actually going to be below average as we do get a trough that digs in and starts to kick up some heat and actually some cooler temperatures to the northern part of the country. As we can see from the southeast all the way up to the east, we can see warming up by quite a lot. And this makes me hungry just looking at it. Robert Reese of Lansing, Michigan, continuing to harvest sweet corn right now. Looks like he's pulling some pretty tasty ears there. Add a little heat and some butter, and there you go, you're good to go. Well, I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
A tree-killing insect is continuing to spread. North Dakota is the latest state to confirm emerald ash borer. The state's Department of Agriculture reporting last week adult beetles were found in a trap near Edgeley in Lemoore County. That makes North Dakota the 37th state to discover the pests. The invasive insect originated in Asia. It was first found back in 2002 in Michigan and has killed many millions of ash trees across the U.S. Now, it's reported North Dakota has more than 90 million ash trees across the state. Now, Pro Farmers numbers came out after markets closed on Friday. We'll talk to editor Brian Grady about those estimates and what it means for markets going forward coming up next. And later, we're off to Louisiana, where corn harvest is underway and nearing completion. We'll check on progress in the country. Something to keep in mind if you're planning to serve turkey during the holidays. USDA reports turkey producers plan to hatch a historically low number of eggs. Now, check out this graphic from the Economic Research Service. It shows inventories of turkey eggs in incubators fell to their lowest level since 1988 as of June 1st, with 22.8 million eggs. Turkey eggs incubated in June typically grow in time to be slaughtered as fresh Thanksgiving birds in November, suggesting the availability of fresh turkey at Thanksgiving will be lower. However, supplies of frozen turkeys may not be an issue. The agency is saying that inventories of whole frozen hen turkeys were up 16% year over year. The industry has suffered losses recently due to outbreaks of avian flu, but experts say the latest drop may be a production decision. Soybeans leading the pack during the trading session Friday, but that was before ProFarmer released its expectations for the 2024 crop. What do the numbers mean for prices? Michelle Rook asked the question in Markets Now.
Grains ending mixed on Friday with corn lower, soybeans higher. Brian Grady with ProFarmer joining us. And Brian, of course, those closes came out before we had the ProFarmer crop estimates. And on soybeans, you came out with a monster crop, 150 million bushels above what USDA had in the August WASDE. What is this going to do to ending stocks?
Oh, it'll increase them. There's no doubt about that. There's a monster soybean crop out there, heavily potted, a lot of moisture, and now it's just a matter of how well it finishes and how many bushels we add into the finish. But it's big, and ending stocks are climbing.
No doubt. And so if you get that ending stocks figure above 600 million bushels, what does that mean for price, do you think?
Oh, it's not bullish, but I think that a lot of this is baked into the market already. While our crop estimate may come in higher than most were anticipating, the funds are still as heavily short the market, and I don't know. You're probably going to see some selling pressure initially on a knee-jerk reaction, but if we don't see a strong wave of selling, I think maybe we can put in early harvest lows and start to climb. But with that said, it's going to be probably restricted, and more so by the fact that there's so much old crop still held on farms, and the big new crop supply coming, and so there's going to be a rush of farmers selling even on any kind of up move in the marketplace.
Corn, you were down 2 bushels on yield from where USDA was. Production down 168 million bushels. Again, what does that mean for ending stocks? Does it get us below 2 billion?
It probably does get below 2 billion bushels, and psychologically that's important. And so I think that of the two, corn has the better set of fundamentals. Moving forward, corn probably needs to lead to the upside, and it's probably going to be a battle, honestly. Soybeans to the downside, corn to the upside, which one pulls harder? And, with the funds so heavily short, like I mentioned, they may just be about done selling and the market's ready to move to the upside.
Thanks so much, Brian Grady with ProFarmer. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Taking a look at our drought monitor, we can see we're starting to see some dryness creep, especially into the Great Lakes regions of the United States. We can see northern Indiana and also parts of the upper peninsula of Michigan starting to see those dry conditions, not yet drought conditions, which is good news there. And actually, we're going to start to see a couple more systems start to move through there, depositing some well-needed moisture, especially when we take a look at our root zone here. We're talking about the first couple layers of topsoil and seeing actually the moisture content in there. And as we can specifically see down in central Kansas, a little very dry there, extremely dry actually, and actually parts of the Ohio River Valley pretty dry as well. Like I said, though, good news is we are going to be seeing some moisture moving through in the form of a couple troughs that are going to start to move this massive ridge of high pressure out of the country. So let's go ahead and time everything out here with our jet stream. Here we go for today. We can see just that huge ridge setting up in the middle of the country, forcing the jet stream well into Canada. Good news is we do have one low pressure system, and we will have another one come through and try and get this massive ridge out. As we can see, that low is just riding into Canada. So we will be seeing some more moisture, especially in Minneapolis and also parts of Wisconsin in the middle of the week, as much of the middle part of the country still is dealing with this crazy heat. And here's our second low pressure system coming off of the west coast there, and that as that digs, also going to be giving the Dakotas and again parts of Minnesota another shot at a lot of moisture. And I know specifically up in Minnesota, they've been dealing with quite a lot of rain for the past growing season. Precipitation forecast going on as we can see just a lot of rain this week, but also notice how we can see there is an absence with that heat ridge as it's slowly moving out of the country. We are seeing all that moisture coming through, especially in Minnesota once again, moving through the country. So we're seeing a lot of moisture this week. Canton, Ohio, 86 degrees, 69 degrees. Swartz, Louisiana, 90 degrees, low of 76 degrees. And Holdrege, Nebraska, 93 degrees, 64 degrees.
Machinery Pete taking a trip to the early 90s for a look at used tractor prices. We'll have that next. And later we're off to Louisiana where farmers are harvesting the corn crop. We'll check on progress and production in the country. Machinery Pete is focused on two things today: tractors wearing red and the early 90s. Here's Pete.
Well, folks, today is Magnum Monday. Now, why is it Magnum Monday? It's Magnum Monday because of an auction last week I need to tell you about. It was actually last Thursday in Rock Valley, Iowa, farm auction where this beautiful 1990 Case IH 7120 two-wheel drive, 2,562 hours on it. It sold for $72,000. That's the highest auction price I've ever seen on a 7110. It's actually $11,000 over the previous record. Now that actually got me thinking about other early 90, late 80 Magnums, box cars that everyone loves. What are the highest prices on the other models? Well, let's take a spin around the dial here. So the highest auction price I've ever seen on a Magnum 7120 sold back on December 28th in 2023 in Palmersville, Tennessee. This 1990 model, 3,652 hours, went for $77,760. And oh, by the way, that same auction in Palmersville, Tennessee had a 7140, 3,467 hours that went for $83,160, highest 7140 ever. Now, no, we're not forgetting about the 7130. Here's a picture of that record high auction price, $75,750, November 16th of 22 in Emerson, Nebraska, 93 model, 4,696 hours, again, $75,750. And let's close it out with the 7150 model, highest price ever, this 92 model with 5,396 hours, sold for $66,000 on an auction December 19th in Milford, Illinois.
All right, thanks, Greg. Well, up next, it's not quite harvest time here in the Midwest. But down south, combines are rolling and corn is coming in. We'll check on progress in Louisiana next. Showed you harvest already underway in Arkansas last week, and it's much the same in Louisiana, where hot, dry weather this month has helped corn producers there make quick work of this year's crop. In fact, as LSU Ag Center reporter Craig Gautreaux tells us, harvest is expected to wrap up this week.
Dust can be seen rising from cornfields across Louisiana as farmers are finishing up this year's harvest. Last year, farmers in the state averaged 175 bushels per acre, but better growing conditions this year have yields trending higher.
I've been getting reports in this year and things look okay. In northeast Louisiana, we've been cutting anywhere from 180 to 200 about. I went down to central Louisiana yesterday and I got a report of 240, and that's pretty much the highest that I've heard.
The bad news for growers is that prices are off significantly. And while input costs were flat or slightly lower, yields are still not high enough to overcome the low price.
A lot of growers are concerned that even though that price was reduced on input, it's not going to make up for the terrible yields we had last year and the low prices that we're going to see this year.
The U.S. corn crop is in good shape and yields are expected to be excellent, which is putting downward pressure on corn prices.
So nationally, we're really expecting a good corn crop, especially out of the Corn Belt. So I think that that's what's depressing prices a little bit here in Louisiana.
Pate Kearns is also the state cotton specialist, and while the hot and dry August has helped corn farmers with their harvest, it's starting to make a dent on the state's cotton crop.
So now we're going through a little bit of a dry spell, which is really good for drying down that corn in the field and for getting it out, getting to the correct moisture content. But it has suffered a little bit in cotton. We've had a lot of fruit shed.
Because of the low prices this year, some farmers in Louisiana might not be able to secure loans to plant next year. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gocho reporting.
All right, thanks, Craig, and that's all the time we have this morning. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clint Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Call.